Now 4:30 on WKYT this morning. WKYT News tracking breaking news out of Lexington this morning. Crews are on the scene of a serious injury crash from overnight, and we'll have the details.
Authorities are looking into a fight at a house party that triggered a UK alert.
And we have some new details this morning in a Central Kentucky shooting that we brought you last night. The latest on the investigation is coming up.
Tracking, alerting, protecting. This is WKYT This Morning.
Good morning from WKYT News and welcome in. It sure is nice to have you along. I'm Bill Bryant.
And I'm Rebecca Smith. Let's get a first look at our forecast on this Tuesday with meteorologist Micah Harris.
And we're looking at those temperatures outside because it is slightly cool at this very moment. I actually had to turn off my AC as I traveled off into work. Temperatures are there in the 50s, and this is well below average already, and will only drop from here on out until that sun does rise over the horizon. 57 degrees there in Lexington. That goes for Richmond. And also sitting there in Berea. Go down south, still mid-50s, and a 61-degree reading over toward Prestonsburg. Today's forecast is pretty much the same as yesterday. Yesterday we hit the mid to upper 70s. That's where we will be today. An awesome day in store. And again, how long does it last? Because you know it doesn't last too long, or does it? I'll have that coming up in your 7-day in just a few minutes.
All right, we will take you while it's here. Thank you.
WKYT is tracking a breaking news alert out of Lexington this morning. Right now, officers on scene of a serious crash on West Maxwell Street.
Police say at about 2:45 this morning, a man was driving inbound onto Maxwell when he hit a light pole and a tree. The man suffered life-threatening injuries in the crash. Firefighters say they had to pull him from his car. He's now been rushed to UK hospital. Investigators on scene say alcohol and speed seem to be factors in the crash, and crash reconstruction teams have shut down the area while they investigate.
It's unknown how long that road will have to be shut down, but of course we'll let you know any updates to this story as the morning progresses. And meanwhile, Kentucky State Police investigating this morning after human remains were found in Wolfe County.
Troopers say they found a man's remains before 7 last night in a wooded area just off Highway 3039 near Campton. The remains have not been identified, but they are at the state medical examiner's office for investigation. Crews had been searching in the area for 50-year-old George Neese. The northern Kentucky man has been missing since last Wednesday. New this morning, police are investigating after human remains were found in northern Kentucky. Erlanger police say an employee at a nearby business found human remains off the Dixie Highway yesterday evening. They say the only identification that they have so far are that the remains are those of a white man. Authorities are not ruling out the possibility of foul play, but they need some more time to investigate. And also new this morning, Lexington police are looking into shots fired, an incident overnight that triggered a UK alert. Officers tell us a group of people were throwing a party at a home on Crescent Drive after another group tried to get in. They say the homeowners wouldn't let them into the party and a fight broke out. One man ended up getting hit with a wooden board. In retaliation, officers say one of the residents fired shots at the suspects. The men then took off and no arrests have been made. We are learning some new details this morning on a shooting that we brought you in a breaking news alert on our 11 o'clock news last night. Dispatchers in Garrett County say sometime last night, officers were called to a report of a shooting at a gas station in Lancaster. Officers tell us that a man was airlifted to UK hospital. Their condition isn't known to us. They say they believe the shooting was accidental and the victim was shot while trying to buy a gun that just happened to be loaded. The investigation is ongoing. Well, he said he was just trying to help his daughter win a contest, but some parents claimed he wasn't setting a good example for children. Last night, the Science Hill School Board held an emergency meeting about some controversial pictures of the district superintendent. This is one of the pictures of Superintendent Rick Walker that upset some parents. The school board made a quick decision about the issue. WKYT's Sam Smith has the board's reaction.
The purpose of this special meeting was to discuss any disciplinary action against Superintendent Rick Walker because of these photos. The school board voted to not have that discussion, and the meeting ended after a few minutes.
I appreciate everybody coming.
A board member tells me this issue is likely done and over with. He says the only way it could come back up again is if a board member brings it up, and he says that's unlikely to happen.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Walker wasn't the only one that felt that way. Parents at the meeting supporting him were glad Walker wasn't punished for the pictures.
We thought it got blown out of proportion.
But it's out of context. It's not fair.
Walker says the photos were part of a contest last month. He says he was trying to win One Direction tickets for his daughter, who's a big fan of the group.
I didn't do anything immoral or illegal.
Some parents had problems with the photos. The school board listened to those complaints, but in the end decided not to move forward with any punishment. When asked if he would have done anything differently, Walker said,
I'm not trying to be glib. I'm not. I wish I'd have figured out a way for that picture that we would have won the contest.
In Pulaski County, Sam Smith, WKYT.
And the next school board meeting is September 8th. If the photo controversy were to be discussed again, that's the soonest that could happen.
A former Louisville priest arrested in Florida on child pornography charges will be returned to Kentucky. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Louisville says 57-year-old Stephen Pohl was charged Monday for knowingly accessing child pornography on 2 computers at St. Margaret Mary Parish. The church has a grade school on its Louisville campus. Pohl was arrested Friday night in Florida. Louisville Archdiocese officials said Friday that FBI investigators found 200 images of students from the school on Pohl's computer. The students were clothed, but some of the images were deemed inappropriate. New this morning, a Lexington man is behind bars this morning after police say he tried to run over his girlfriend while driving with her kids in the car. 22-year-old Kenneth Mitchell is charged with wanton endangerment and theft, among other charges. Police say yesterday he punched his girlfriend, then got in her vehicle with her 2 young children and tried to run her down as she stood on the street. Mitchell is set to be arraigned today.
The Fayette County Board of Education has approved a tax increase. During its meeting last night, the board approved raising the tax on real estate and personal property by 2.1 cents. So now the tax rate will be 74 cents per every $100. But the school board did not raise the tax on motor vehicles. This was also the first school board meeting for new Fayette County Superintendent Manny Kalk. He spent part of the meeting going over his entry plan for making the school district better, and that includes getting ideas from others.
We need to bring in those experts to help us with the district diagnostic. I consider that if you look at our organization as a person, every year you get your annual physical. Well, we haven't had a physical, in terms of looking at our organization.
Superintendent Kalk says the district will also hold listening sessions and roundtable discussions with the community to get ideas on how to make improvements. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit against Jim Beam, accusing Kentucky bourbon makers of false advertising. In the lawsuit, a California man claimed that Jim Beam's claim that its products are handcrafted allowed the company to sell bourbon at a higher price because customers connect handcrafted with high-end products. The judge ruled a reasonable consumer would not interpret handcrafted to mean that bourbon is literally created by hand.
Well, the IndyCar organization announced driver Justin Wilson has died. Wilson had been in a coma after being hit in the head by a piece of debris during a race Sunday in Pennsylvania. Investigators say the debris had broken off another car. Wilson's car then veered into a wall at the track. There's some bad news for the UK football team less than 2 weeks before the season kicks off. The NCAA has ruled 2 players who transferred to UK ineligible for the season. Linebacker Courtney Love and tight end Greg Hart were ruled ineligible yesterday. Coach Mark Stoops said UK would appeal the ruling for Love. Both Love and Hart were not expected to be ruled eligible for the upcoming season.
Kentucky Sports Radio host Matt Jones says he is thinking about running for Congress next year. Jones told his listeners Monday morning that if he runs, he would seek the 6th district seat currently held by Republican Andy Barr. Jones says the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee called him in May and asked him to consider running. Jones says he thinks they're looking for a different kind of candidate. However, the non-traditional approach has worked for other Kentuckians.
That's probably why they were interested in me to begin with, is I do think there's a change in politics. Donald Trump is an example of that, but it even goes back to when Arnold Schwarzenegger won, when Al Franken won. I think there's a difference. People do sort of want a different type of person.
A spokesperson for Congressman Barr said that he is a big fan of Kentucky sports radio, but he thinks the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is confusing politics with Kentucky athletics. Jones says he hopes to decide whether he's going to run before Big Blue Madness in October. And Kentucky is moving on in the Little League World Series after a big win against South Carolina. Kentucky went up early in the first inning, scoring 3 runs in their first couple of at-bats. South Carolina tied it up, though, by the 5th. But an infield hit scores the go-ahead run, and Kentucky wins it 4-3. They advance to play California. That game will be tonight at 8. Exciting to watch those young guys.
Yeah.
Good to have you along at 4:40 on WKYT this morning as we're just getting started.
Can eating honey help us build immunity to seasonal allergies? Mom's Everyday investigates. Coming up.
Looking at these temperatures out and about, you wouldn't think it's still summer. We're sitting there in the 50s. You know what? We'll get even lower than that. We'll get into that forecast coming up next.